Hi, everyone. It's me, Krylios, Team Racing Productions MC and producer. And joining me today is Jamaal Gulledge. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's great to have you here. How are you?
I'm well, actually. Well, it's been a morning, but I'm well. Can't complain.
Uh, well, that is great to hear. Well, I want to start this off with just having you introduce yourself to our audience and let us know a little bit about, your background and experience.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. So a little bit about me. I grew up in a single parent household in Portland, Oregon. My mom was a public servant as well. She worked for the city of Portland and kind of always, push union leadership and union membership to us as children with my brother and I, my late brother. And I went to school at Cal State Northridge. And prior to going to school, I just remember, and part of the reason why I'm motivated to run is, my mom being a single parent going through cancer, going through that alone. And she would go to work, or excuse me, she would go to chemo treatments in the morning and then go to work right after chemotherapy. And I think everyone has, had a family member or a friend who's actually, experienced cancer or knows someone who went through cancer. And for anyone to go to work after chemotherapy, it's like, wow, why? And I remember asking my mom, why would you go to work, mom? Kind of being naive about it at that age. And I remember her saying part of it being pride, but the other part of it was that she had to maintain her healthcare. Because we all know that if you don't work, you don't get healthcare in this country. The other part of it was that she had a mortgage that she had to pay. And so that was kind of what sparked me to motivate to run. But as I said, I went to school out here in California, Cal State Northridge. Throughout my college career, I worked full time with seniors. So, working in assisted living and senior living facilities, and got an opportunity to, spend a lot of times with folks who are some boomers, some of the silent generation, and learning about their experiences, during the civil rights movement, and also learning about a lot of the challenges that they face. And sadly, in our country, I think a lot of times we don't think about the older generations or the silent generations of folks who have retired and have done contributed to society. And so that was a real passion of mine. Currently, I work at UCLA. I'm a Bruin through means of a staff member, and I work with students as an HR manager. So one of the great things about my job is I work in student affairs. So I'm able to kind of help students cultivate them, learn how to apply interview skills, resume building skills, working skills. So learning different skills they can apply in the HR field and take it with them once they graduate from school. So that's a little bit about my background professionally and personally. Outside of that, I have volunteered for several presidential campaigns, most notably Hillary Clinton in 2016, Kamala Harris in 2020, and also Biden Harris in 2020.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome.
So,
So tell me why have you chosen to throw instead of volunteering this time or anything like that, actually throwing your hat into the ring, and running as a candidate for the California State Senate District 28?
yeah, so it stems back to what I mentioned earlier. It's about my mom and healthcare.
Mm,
And what was highlighted about this was the current pandemic. A lot of people say that we're
mm,
out of the pandemic, but we all know that we are still in a pandemic. It's still a large threat. But what we learned from that was that people lost their healthcare, right? 2 years ago, this is what I saw something on Twitter that said 2 years ago, this was the last normal week that we would have, and not realizing that. But when that happened, a lot of frontline workers who worked in theaters and any kind of frontline work where they were required to interact with folks were told they didn't have to come to work anymore and lost their jobs. And
mhm.
what happened was they lost their healthcare. And so that is, again, why I wanted to run. We saw in California, AB 1400 didn't pass. That was a universal healthcare plan. And so that's why I wanted to run, because I wanted to have a voice for the folks who lost their jobs. I saw it personally in my job. Some folks at UCLA lost the opportunity to work. And so it was really heartbreaking to see that. So that's why I wanted to run for this seat, because we need to pass
Certainly.
universal healthcare.
Yeah, of course. And you have universal healthcare. And aside from that, what other issues that would you love to tackle if elected to this post?
Mhm. Absolutely. So I think that in California and across the country, we've seen an increase in the unhoused or homelessness. And that's something that's near and dear to me. You know, I mentioned my late brother earlier. He died in July of homelessness, amongst other things, but homelessness, mental health issues, and as well as alcohol abuse. And so homelessness is definitely a key issue that I would like to work on. I think that we can address that through a holistic approach, you know, making sure that folks have housing without conditions, and seeing housing as a human right and not necessarily a privilege. I think that, you know, regardless of someone's personal circumstances, whether they be suffering from substance abuse or mental health, should have a right to a home and a roof. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the other thing that I want to work on is housing affordability and healthcare. Again, in California, housing affordability is insane. And I feel like we've depended too much on private developers to bail us out of this. And we can't depend on developers to bail us out of this mess.
Certainly. Tell me, what's your favorite thing about California?
Ooh, you can't beat our weather. You know, coming from someone who was from Oregon and had to deal with rain 200 plus something days out of the year, you just can't beat California sunshine. Yeah, exactly.
That is true. That is true. You can't beat that if you're coming from Oregon. Tell me why you're the best choice for voters this election cycle.
Mm-hmm. Great question. I think that I'm the best choice because I represent change. And one thing that I like to tell folks and tell voters when I'm interacting with our community is that the Democratic Party is a party of change, right? We elected the first African-American president of the United States. We had the first African-American first lady. We, you know, nominated the first woman to be our Democratic nominee for president. Kamala Harris, the first African-American DA, the first African-American Attorney General, the first African-American US Senator from California, the first African-American, Asian-American Vice President of the United States. And my candidacy represents a lot of firsts as well. I was the first man in my family to graduate from college, the only man in my family to graduate and have a master's degree. And if I were elected to this seat, I would be the first LGBTQ open Black candidate in California legislative history. So my candidacy represents change. I'm also I'm not an establishment choice, if you will. You know, I represent change and the opportunity to push for what the voters want. And I think that, you know, just electing any old Democrat that's been hand selected by the party elite is not going to get us to the things that we need.
Awesome, awesome. So when does voting begin for this specific position?
Mm-hmm. So California is one of the great states that does all mail-in ballots. We also do have the option to go to the polls, but voting does start in early May. Or excuse me, ballots are mailed out in April, but early voting starts in May, where you can go into the polls and actually vote. And election day is June 7th. So that's when all the ballots are due. That's when the polls are open, you know, from 7 to 7. And that's the opportunity to go out and vote.
Awesome. And we want to remind our viewers that if you want to check your voter status, if you want to register to vote, you can go to headcount.org. Once again, go to headcount.org to check your status, pledge to vote, and register to vote. Before I let you go, Jamaal, how can people learn more about you, learn more about your campaign, you know, follow and keep up with what you're doing, as well as support or volunteer in any way they want to?
Absolutely. So you can visit my website. It's Jamaal with 2 A's, Jamaal Gulledge.com at my website. You can follow me on Facebook at Jamaal SD28 or on Instagram, Jamaal_Gulledge_California. And lastly, on Twitter, Jamaal for California, or CA, excuse me.
Awesome, awesome. So we're gonna have those links in the description below. So our viewers who are watching, you can go ahead and click the link below and go ahead and find out everything that Jamaal has to offer, and to keep up, support, donate if you want. Jamaal, thanks so much for coming here. Thanks so much for having this chat with me. It's been such a pleasure, and I wish you best of luck on your campaign.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a great opportunity to meet you, and hopefully stay connected.
Certainly, certainly. Hope that we can do this again. All right. So if you're watching, well, I'm sure you are, please follow Team Racing Productions at Team Racing on all forms of social media. Like, comment, and subscribe. But most of all, Thank you for watching. Bye, everyone.